there, Shruti here with episode 2 of Women of Communities Take 10, a video series, each episode under 10 minutes, and elevates and celebrates a woman of color doing extraordinary work for the health of her community. Our guest for episode 2 is Dr. Lisa Fitzpatrick. Let me tell you about this powerhouse of a human. Her work crosses clinical medicine, entrepreneurship, healthcare policy, and community engagement. She's an infectious disease expert with public health experience in multiple countries. She spent years in CDC's elite epidemic intelligence services, and she was also the chief medical officer for the Medicaid program in Washington, D.C. You think I'm done? Oh, I'm not done. She also started Grapevine Health last year, focused on health literacy, making health and health information less intimidating to Black and Brown populations. She also started Lisa on the Streets, which is a video series that caught the attention of our very own President Joe Biden's Committee on Healthcare Policy. So, of course, she was also an advisor for that committee. Okay. That's a lot. I told you, powerhouse of a human. Let's bring up Dr. Lisa now. 1 second. Dr. Lisa, thank you so much for taking the time for letting me interview you today.
Absolutely. It's great to be here.
All right. So you are a doctor, you are a storyteller, you're an entrepreneur, you are many things, but first and foremost, you are for the people. Tell us, who are your people? What communities do you serve and how do you support them?
That's a great question. No one's ever asked me who my people are, but I work with underserved populations, mostly low-income Black people, also Medicaid populations. What we're doing is trying to support their engagement in healthcare by providing trusted, culturally appropriate health content and being a trusted resource for health navigation.
For folks that are watching, you should know Dr. Lisa, she a month ago was interviewed by The Atlantic, and 2 weeks ago, she interviewed Dr. Fauci for her podcast. That's insane. That's pretty awesome. So I would say, Dr. Lisa, you have made it. But of course, I know, it's been a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the risks that you had to take? How did you pursue your vision and just overcome those fears?
So one of my jobs many years ago was as a medical epidemiologist for CDC, and I worked there for almost 10 years. And if you stay within the public health service for 20 years, you get a pension. But I decided to leave my pension on the table because it didn't feel right to stay at CDC at that time. I was being drawn back to community. I took a leap several years after that and left to change my career. I was mostly seen as an infectious disease provider. It was difficult to expand outside that box. So I took a year off and spent time at the Harvard Kennedy School learning about entrepreneurship, innovation. That led to the next risk, which was, do I want to become an entrepreneur? It was very scary. It actually still is. The scary part, how you make it all work. Learning about how you stand up a company. It's a different language. It's a different set of skills. Still, I think it's worth it. So if anyone out there is thinking about taking the risk, if it feels right, you've got to try it. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? I would stand up a health literacy media enterprise to teach underserved people about the healthcare system, how to talk to doctors in a very entertaining way, though. So that's what's going on with Grapevine Health.
Something that I found out about you, which I think is amazing, is that you live in the communities that you serve. One of the reasons I've started this is that you feel such passion from women of color who are serving their communities and trying to work for the health of their communities. And I feel that so much with you. And so can you just tell us a little bit more about that, like living in the communities that you serve, a little bit more about Dr. Lisa on the Streets, what inside of you has inspired you to do these things?
I would say my biggest inspiration for all of this came many years ago. So I was sitting on a panel, a community panel. So after the meeting, a man came up to me and he said, how does someone like me access someone like you on a regular basis? Now, this man had a healthcare provider, but there was something about the way I was communicating the information to him that really struck a chord and resonated with him. Jay Leno used to have a segment called Jaywalking. And I thought I should try that with health, because if I am successful at getting people to at least talk about uncomfortable health issues, then maybe that will inspire some change in their health behavior. So I found a videographer and went out onto the streets of DC, and we filmed a video, our first video. That was the beginning of Dr. Lisa on the Street. That was inspired by the conversation I had that day with the guy who said, "How do I access you?" You see the amount of suffering, the health outcomes that are so poor in underserved communities. We talk a lot about health disparities, and now we're talking about health equity and health inequity. But I don't think we have a good enough understanding of what's driving some of these disparities. And it's very hard to build trust, which is the currency for Grapevine Health. We are trying to build trust with community. One day I was walking in my neighborhood and I stumbled upon some men in an alley, and I stopped to chat with them. And we started to talk about coronavirus. And one of them said, "Who are you? Why are you here? Where did you come from?" And I told them I was a doctor, and they didn't believe it. And then finally someone said, "Well, who can vouch for you?" They needed me to bring an ambassador, someone they trusted so that they could then trust me. But I think the story illustrates how important it is. You can't expect trust to be given very, very easily. You have to earn it.
Yeah.
And so living in the community, again, is just another way to help build trust. But what I've noticed is that a lot of the health disparities we're seeing are driven by trauma, chronic trauma associated with living in poverty, living in scarcity. I think those are the conversations that need to be integrated into all of our conversations about healthcare and system transformation.
Yeah. I also have been following your journey with the vaccination. Can you tell us more about
Ah,
that?
I decided to enroll in a vaccine trial. Again, it's because of my work on the street. I was out in the community and the gentleman said to me, "Well, I'm not taking that vaccine." And I said, "Well, what would it take to get you to take the vaccine, to trust it?" And he said, "Well, if I could see other Black people involved or associated with it." So I said, "Well, what if I enroll in a vaccine trial? Would you trust it then?" So I got on the website, filled out the form. I've been trying to chronicle my experience to let people see I truly am in a vaccine study. In fact, I had 2 doses last year, and just yesterday, they unblinded my participation in the Moderna trial. So I got the vaccine.
I love that. We're going to name some names now. So, Women of Community is all about elevating and celebrating women of color who are working for the health of their communities. Who are the women that inspire you?
I would like to elevate the names of women who I know are not visible. These are women who are working in the community, or they have great ideas and they're not seen. Maybe they're not prominent on social media. These are people like Dr. Reagan McDonald Mosley, Dr. Asha Collins, Sarah Horton, Jamila Parrott, Adamika Arthur. She is someone I will single out who's been a champion and a supporter. And then just one person in my community, Dion Reeder, who has been a committed servant to the community.
For folks watching, check out the comments below. There are links to profiles for those that do have profiles. There are folks watching this that are allies that would love to support women of community and love to accelerate your work. So tell us, what's one actionable thing that people watching can do to help support you and accelerate your work?
Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Grapevine Health YouTube channel. It's because we can't go live on the street until we have 1,000 followers on YouTube. So go to our page and just click the subscribe button.
I mean, we definitely want them to go live on the streets, first of all. So please do subscribe. But also, the content is amazing. I'm telling you, this woman has interviewed Dr. Fauci. Seriously, follow her. Lisa, thank you so much again for taking the time. I honestly am so inspired by your work. Just love keeping up with everything that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the offer.
Yeah. And to the audience, thank you for taking 10 to learn about an amazing woman of community. And until the next time, bye. Bye, Dr. Lisa.